So a few words about Bezelel, the artisan, in his artistic works that are repeated over and over in the passage I read from. There's a concept in Judaism called hidur mitzvah, which means to beautify the mitzvah. Now, the mitzvah is the mitzvah, right? You do that sacred deed and it doesn't even need to be adorned. But to beautify it is to add something extra. So it made me think as I was, kind of reading about artisans and Bezelel and all the crafting that it took to create that sanctuary. I thought about the role artists play in our lives, the role artists play in our society. In that part of the portion, it's so filled with beautification, with hidur mitzvah. You can have a holy place, and then you can also make sure that the holy place is beautiful and heightened in its aesthetics. So the role that artists play in our lives, to inspire us, to bring us to heightened awareness, help us believe in our own potential, our potential to stretch and to grow. Our artists and our artisans, if you want to use that term, allow us access to our full emotional palette. There's something that happens through art, visual art, performance art, recording art. There's something about that kind of opens us up to feel maybe ways that we're not able to feel through just sort of regular discourse, without the artistic embellishment, without the hidur mitzvah. So I want to talk about something that's been in the news just these last couple of days, and maybe even more than that. And I want to just kind of tread carefully, because it's controversial, but I couldn't let go of this news item, and so some of you know, some of you don't. There's a contemporary musical artist, an artisan, Matisyahu. Matisyahu is an interest. He's been around for quite a while. He's a pop artist with a heavy reggae and hip-hop influences. When he first burst on the scene, the music scene, a lot of attention was paid to the fact that he was an observant Jew. He was actually what's called a Baal Tshuva, someone who was Jewish but wasn't raised observant or Orthodox, and then as an adult became observant, became Orthodox. And actually, maybe because of, maybe in spite of that religiosity of Matisyahu, he gained success, limited mainstream success, but certainly outside of his role as an observant Jew and as someone who sings, quite spiritual and not religious-based, but brings elements of his religiosity into his music. One interesting thing about Matisyahu is that in the last probably 10 years, he stopped being Orthodox. Again, there's lots of different journeys. What I work on with my confirmation student is, especially in our country, the array of different Jewish expressions and Jewish journeys. But Matisyahu became Orthodox as a young man, now as an older adult, still proudly Jewish, which you'll hear about in a second, but no longer considers himself observant or Orthodox. That was very intriguing to me. Both people who take on observance as adults, and those people who leave it, something about that kind of is appealing and interesting to me as a specific type of Jewish journey. So that's sort of an introduction to who Matisyahu is, a little bit about him. So he's been on tour. But recently, Matisyahu's been back in the news, and I kind of became aware of this because a group of my friends from high school were planning to go to see him, mostly because there was protests being planned against him. Some of my Jewish friends from home weren't going to go in the first place, but decided to go because of these protests that were being planned by Palestinian Americans and allies, including Jewish Voices for Peace. And so I looked into it. I hadn't really heard this part of it. And it turns out that in just the last couple of months, 3 of his previous sold-out concerts, and the concert in Chicago was sold out, were actually called off because of the fear of the planned protests, that the venues, the promoters decided to cancel his concert because they claimed, and some of the staff claimed they wouldn't work at his concert because of the planned protests and maybe in solidarity with the protesters. So what's going on with Matisyahu and protest? So as far as I could find out, and again, I'm not someone who follows his career, Matisyahu has expressed support for Israel in the current war. He's played benefits for the families of the hostages and for the IDF. There are some old interviews where he expressed some skepticism about Palestinian claims, and that's all I could find out. At the same time, I also found out that he's recorded and performed, and this I think I knew, with Arab and other Muslim artists throughout his career, really kind of in a very overt way. And he's made many recent statements expressing prayers for both Jews and Palestinians through this recent conflict. After the show was canceled in Arizona and New Mexico, he put out a statement that said, "My show was canceled because they are either anti-Semitic or have confused their empathy for the Palestinian people with hatred for someone like me who holds empathy for both Israelis and Palestinians." So, the part of that was really difficult for me is that I know that a lot of artists and musical artists and other kinds of artists express controversial views and hold very strong political and societal views. But as someone who's an avid concert goer, these kinds of cancellations because of protests are rare. I'm all for the right to protest, and I think that I really am, like all of us, trying to find myself on the array of opinions and statements that go along with this just awful war. I went to a concert not too long ago where, because the venue required everyone to have COVID vaccinations, there was a huge protest. This was in New York at a venue. I had to walk through loud and vociferous protests, anti-vax protests. I appreciated their right to do that. The concert still went on. And that's the part that really bothers me, is that when these threats of protest leads to the artist or the artisan not being able to express themselves in a venue, in a concert that has nothing to do with the politics of the day, but just their art and just their hidur mitzvah, their desire to beautify the world through art. It's hard for me not to believe that this is a case of a little bit of canary in the coal mine. Hard to deny that anti-Semitism is indeed, unfortunately, playing a role in Matisyahu, this public Jewish artist, being singled out because of his explicit Jewish identity. He has no influence in either direction on the war that's happening in Gaza. He's just an artist trying to express himself, and is the one person in this whole era who is having concerts canceled and not being allowed to do his work, his artistry. And so I'm not an alarmist, I never have been, but I do believe that this is another sign that we live in tenuous times. And in these tenuous times, we need all the art and artisans that we can get. And so it's ironic to me that one of Matisyahu's biggest songs is called "One Day," and I want to read to you the chorus because he couldn't sing last night. I'll sing it with you all today. The chorus goes, "All my life I've been waiting for, and I've been praying for the people to say that we don't want to fight no more, there'll be no more wars, and our children will play one day."